Honoring him well.
Honored my husband.
Honored my husband. Honoring my husband. Honoring his wishes. Honoring our family succession plan.
We honored Charlie.
I honored my husband. So I honored my husband, honored Charlie. We are going to honor him.
Way to honor him. We honor my husband. We're going to honor him.
To honor his legacy.
Honoring my husband.
Honor my husband. Honoring my husband.
Honoring my husband.
Honor my husband so well.
To honor him in that way. Here to honor my husband.
There is one line that I keep coming back to. I pulled every clip I could find, Erika, Charlie, JD Vance, the TPUSA Inner Circle, on what it means to honor Charlie. Some of the clips are from after September 10th. Most are from before, years before, in Erika's own voice. Because there are two definitions of honoring Charlie sitting in the public record. One of them is hers, now, as CEO and chair, because of course she's so much more than Charlie ever was, apparently. The other is what Charlie said, what Vance said, and what Erika herself preached for years before any of it was hers. They are the same words with opposite meanings. It starts 3 months after he died, when Erika went on his show, the Charlie Kirk Show, the one his own executive producer, Andrew Colvett, still runs, to sell Charlie's lost book. Watch how the people who worked for her husband talk to her. No. Then watch her answer.
Welcome back to the Charlie Kirk Show. We have the great Erika Kirk, who is out there doing an amazing job telling the world about Charlie's last book. Erika Kirk, you are doing an amazing job. You can get this book. It comes out today. Erika, you're doing phenomenal. I know how busy your day is because I've seen the schedule, and I just love that
it's
you made
a Charlie
time.
schedule.
Yeah.
We're honoring him well.
Exactly, you are. Today you're not resting, but you will rest this weekend. Yeah, but
I
today,
will on Friday and Saturday and Sunday.
You deserve it. You have earned it, and then some. I mean,
start with what he calls her, the great Erika Kirk. He doesn't call her Charlie's wife, and he doesn't call her our friend Erika. She gets announced like a headliner, and he's not the only one in this orbit who introduces her that way. Then there's her line, a Charlie schedule for honoring him well. That's the definition she's offering. Take a dead man's calendar, run it, and call that devotion. One small aside about her rest days in that clip. Friday and Saturday come out first, and Sunday trails in like an afterthought, which is backwards for supposedly Christian, because Sunday is the day of rest, right? Duh. Friday into Saturday was the Sabbath that Charlie kept. Well, after they got married, but separate thing. I'll leave it there for now. If her Charlie schedule line had been a one-off, a tired line on a busy press day, I would have let it go. It wasn't a one-off though. She has given the same definition on bigger stages with time to prepare. Here she is at AmericaFest in December.
I honored my husband by completing all of his pre-planned fall media tour hits for his book, any commitment he had. I wanted to honor that for him. I wasn't going on a media tour myself. This was for my husband. Because in our household, our word is our bond. And when you give it, you uphold it. So I honored my husband that way.
The AmericaFest version tells you this answer was written, not something that she blurted out last minute. That sounds like a wedding vow until you remember the word in question was given to a media booking. She's describing press hits, and she's describing them in covenant language. And the official channel put the word on the packaging. The upload of that speech carries a thumbnail that reads, in giant letters, honoring Charlie. And she was still giving that answer on the road in 2026. Here she is at a stop on the Make Heaven Crowded tour.
There was other things that he had on his schedule that I wanted to honor for him and finish for him. It was just the right thing to do.
That is the same answer 3 times now. His show, the AmericaFest stage, the tour, nearly word for word. Honoring Charlie means finishing Charlie's calendar. And the sameness is not consistency to her credit. It is the tell. This answer did not exist while Charlie was alive. It shows up only after September 10th. Already word perfect, and it replaced a completely different answer, one she spent years teaching. Charlie had a different answer too, and his comes first.
One of my favorite words, duty. We are a dutyless nation right now. And young men have not been told, hey, listen, pal, you have an obligation to that child and your wife, and anything less than that is is challenging the divine, is waging war on nature.
The line right before the obligation line is the part I haven't heard anyone quoting on TPUSA stages since he died. Challenging the divine. That is not soft pastoral language, and Charlie's framing a man who lets the work crowd out his wife and kids isn't dropping the ball. He is at war with God's design.
And is you not being the best version of yourself, right? Now that doesn't mean much to most men anymore, unfortunately. That's clarified it. The second thing on masculinity, which is really important, is people say, well, Charlie, how do you juggle it all? You know, in the last 5 months, I'm busy. I'm still doing 3 hours a radio day, raising a bunch of money for Turning Point. I have 350 employees at Turning Point USA and all this. But I prioritize being a father and being present, saying no to a lot more stuff, shamelessly, by the way.
Charlie was the one drowning in it, and his instruction was to say no, shamelessly. He chose that word on purpose. Turning work down to be home with his kids wasn't a failure in his framework. It was the whole point. In his framing, the schedule was the enemy. Now, put her line from the opening next to that.
I know how busy your day is.
It's a Charlie schedule.
Yeah.
We're honoring him well.
He said to fight the schedule. She made the schedule the tribute. And it was not a church-only answer.
I'm like, you want to interview me? Come to Phoenix.
Yeah.
Because my kids are my most important thing in my world. My wife, my kids, my relationship with God, top 3 things, right? God, wife, kids, in that order. And so that's a sacrifice that I just am not willing to make. So I'm just saying no to a lot more stuff.
This wasn't something he polished for the faithful. He was still saying it to a Podcast Bro audience 10 weeks before his death. Wherever family ranked against the work for Charlie, he ranked it the same in public, to the end. 5 days after his death, the vice president guest hosted Charlie's own show and gave the same answer.
We talked all the time about the most important thing you could do is not vote for a particular candidate. It was to become, if you were a young man, a husband and a father. He talked about the joy that came from fatherhood, the joy that came from raising a family and being part of their growth and their development and all the incredible things that happen when you get to be a husband and father. And that is the way that I'm going to honor my friend, is to be the very best at that most important job that I can be.
That is the Vice President of the United States, 5 days after Charlie's death, hosting Charlie's show and doing the next 2 hours of his program. The first way he tells America he is going to honor Charlie is by being the best husband and father he can be. He doesn't lead with the movement, the policy, or the politics. He leads with husband and father. To be fair, he goes on to say that's not the only way, and he says,
But that's not the only way that I'm going to honor Charlie, and there's going to be a lot of discussion over the next 2 hours of this radio program about what exactly that looks like. It's important, and Erika asked me this, to make sure that his movement, the movement that Charlie started, has to keep going. We have to build upon it. We have to add to it. We have to make sure that the next generation of young people feels confident and courageous to speak their mind and to speak the truth.
The order matters, and so does where he says the second answer came from. He led with the family answer, and the movement answer he credited to Erika. He didn't say it was Charlie's wish. He said it was hers. So now you have Charlie himself and Vance both pointing at the same thing. Be a present spouse and a present parent, because that is the highest honor. Erika's headline is the opposite of that. Take his schedule. If this were the only clip, maybe you would file it under grief, a widow making an impossible call in public. But it isn't the only clip. Erika has her own teaching record on this, hours of it from her own stages, years before September 10th. Here it is.
What matters is you're seeking him in all of your decisions, and you're being faithful with what he's blessed you with, and that you're raising your babies to love the Lord. That's what he cares about, to honor him above all else and manage your household.
The him in that clip is God, not Charlie. But the framework is what matters. What she told that women's conference was simple. A faithful woman raises her babies and manages her household. Now, put her current schedule next to it. CEO of TPUSA, chair of TPUSA's board, not something Charlie was, headliner of the Make Heaven Crowded Rival Tour, a Trump appointment to the Air Force Academy's Board of Visitors, whatever that's all about, national media appearances, and 2 young children at home. Who is doing the household managing in that life? Her own podcast has it too.
And that you are raising your babies to love
the Lord, to honor him above all else, and that you are managing your household in a way that brings glory to his name.
It's the same teaching in a different setting. She didn't land on nearly the same words by accident. She said it live at Bloom, and she said it again on her own podcast. Manage your household and raise your babies. The opposite of the thing she's doing right now. Once is a soundbite, the same teaching in two genuinely different places, a conference and her own podcast. That's a position. There is one more phrase from that same episode.
Step into the confidence that God has called you to walk in as a mother, as a wife, and a guardian of your home.
Guardian of your home is the phrase she chose. She didn't say executive of your home, and she didn't say CEO of your home. She said guardian. A guardian's job is to stay there and protect what's inside. Her current title is chair and CEO of Turning Point USA. The title she gave women on her podcast was guardian of the home. Those are different jobs for a reason. The same episode also gets personal.
I mean, I'm sure she would rather be home with me, but when she was home, she was home. She was all in. She didn't take her work home with her. Even if she did have her own company, she left it at work.
Erika is praising her own mother for the thing she now cannot do. Her mom had a company and still kept her presence at home protected. She didn't bring the work back into the house, and she didn't bring the kids into the work, as far as we know anyway. At least not something that was advertised to us.
Yes, balance is an illusion. I bring my children to the office.
The Charlie schedule isn't a job you can leave at the office. It's tour stops and TV hits week after week. It is the opposite of the bar she set in that clip.
She was all in.
She set that bar herself, and she doesn't clear it. Then there's the joint material, Erika and Charlie together on the record.
Marriage of a teamwork, and symbolic within biblical marriage, and symbolic within how God and Jesus and everything, just your whole faith is supposed to operate. So submission's a beautiful thing.
The job she described for herself was a support function. Make it easier for the husband to do his. She taught that with Charlie right there in a Q&A the two of them recorded together. So by her own definition, she was never supposed to be the one whose work the household orbits. She was supposed to make someone else's work possible. Now, there is no husband to make it easier for now. There's only her work. The structure she taught is gone, and the question it forces is simple. When the husband is gone, where is the helpmate's focus supposed to go? Her own answer was always the kids. That role is still sitting there. That is not where she went. The same conversation boils it down even further.
My biblical role is to be the helpmate to my husband.
That is the cleanest one-line version of the framework. Helpmate. She didn't say principal. She didn't say co-CEO. She said helpmate.
As a wife, I am to, quote unquote, submit to you, which is a beautiful word, by the way, because that's the order of how it's supposed to go. And God will bless that. I am not to try and rival you. We're on the same team.
This isn't a curated moment for Women's Conference. It's how she described her own marriage in front of her own husband. When the husband is gone, helpmate doesn't transfer to running the husband's company. Helpmate, taken seriously, points inward, toward the kids. That is the part of the role that is still hers. One more from that Q&A.
Women have it so mixed up. You can have a career after children, but if you try to have a career while you have your kids, there is no such thing as balance. That is such a myth. I can't spend half of the day doing one thing. I missed out half of that time with being with the kids. So you have to choose where your heart has to be fully with the home.
She also gave the timeline. The career is not forbidden in her framework. It is sequenced.
You can always, after your kids are in school or after they're in high school, you can always go back to work. You can always find a way to get back into the workforce. But if you miss those precious first few years, that is so hard to make up because memories are so much more important than an added paycheck.
It waits until the kids are in school or in high school because the early years are the part you cannot get back, and the paycheck is the part you always can. Not that she needs it anyway. I mean, she is swimming in it. for the rest of her life. Like, really, she's not going to be strapped for cash. That's not in her cards. That was the spring of 2025, with Charlie right there on the joint Q&A. In September 2025, she took the CEO job with a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old at home. By the sequence she taught months earlier, this is the exact stretch of her children's lives she said a mother cannot make up. The joint archive goes back further. This is 2023.
So I think there's a difference between being an alpha female within the sphere that you operate in, from like work standpoint, friendship circles, all of that. But when it comes to your husband, he is your alpha. You are always to submit to your husband, and not in a way of slave versus master, but in a helpmate way.
She drew the boundary herself. Being an alpha female is fine inside the sphere you operate in. Work, friendships. But with your husband, he is the alpha and you submit. Since September 10th, she is the alpha in both worlds at once. She runs the work side as CEO and chair, even though she doesn't need to. And the marriage she described has nobody above her in it anymore. Boss babe Erika. The exchange at the end is the whole posture in one line.
Right. Because I never have that issue with you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for leading us so well, babe.
He leads and she thanks him for it. Aww. Then there are the summit speeches. Here she is at TPUSA's Young Women's Summit in 2025, back when it was still for young women.
I'm so grateful we're in this generation. I'm so grateful we're in this day and age, because we get to fight, metaphorically, but we get to fight in the spiritual battle. It's for your home, it's for your future.
She told that room the urgent mission of their generation was building homes, not movements, not platforms, homes. Then there's the battleground line.
The battleground is for your heart, it's for your home, it's for your future.
The cultural fight worth fighting, she said, happens at home, in your house, not in the room she was speaking to. Put her current calendar next to that sentence, and the battleground is nowhere near the home. The same speech went after the career directly.
Don't worry about the school. Don't worry about the job. I actually think that that's some form of feminism, to be so caught up in, I have to have this career, and I have to have this, and I have to that. It's a distraction.
In front of a room full of young women, she wrote of chasing a career as, in her words, some form of feminism. She didn't frame it as bold leadership or carrying a torch. She framed it as a warning. Her life now is career first, title first, and organization first. By the test she gave those women, she became the woman she warned them about. The record reaches back to 2021.
Yes, of course, your first and foremost, most important relationship is the relationship you have with Jesus Christ. But with the Holy Spirit flowing through your veins, the second most important relationship is the one with your husband and your children.
That is a sentence that lands hard if your kids are home and you are not. Her own teaching said children are not supposed to take a back seat to worldly demands, and she defined those demands precisely.
She really showed me that children are not an inconvenience to your dreams, and they're not an inconvenience to your job or to the worldly demands that you deem as important at the time. But so much in our world today is get what you want in life. Do you. You're a boss, babe. Go do your thing. You don't need a husband. You don't need a man. You can have a work husband.
The CEO position of TPUSA is a worldly demand. The Revival Tour is a worldly demand. The Trump board appointment is a worldly demand. By the test her own teaching set, she is deeming all of them important enough to come first.
So I saw this in New York all the time, where these women are in their late 30s, so frustrated with life because they were fulfilling themselves in the worldly standard rather than in the word standard, and they were just confused, even though they didn't think they were.
This is the part I cannot reconcile. She is making fun of the exact woman she now fits the description of. The boss babe, the career-first woman who doesn't need a husband. Late 30s, frustrated, trading the word standard for the worldly standard. I don't think she meant this as her own future resume. But here's what she has done since September 10th. In order, she became CEO of TPUSA, she became chair of TPUSA, she took a Trump appointment to the Air Force Academy's Board of Visitors, she launched into a revival tour, and she gave the answer this video opened with.
I just love that
It's
you
a
made
Charlie
time.
schedule.
Yeah.
We're honoring him well.
Not to mention a bunch of media appearances and conferences and, well, the Charlie schedule. The boss babe she was making fun of is the woman she is now, and she didn't get there by accident. Those are titles she accepted and a tour she headlines. You can't preach the word standard in 2021 and walk into the worldly standard in 2025 and offer that line as the thing that makes it okay. One more from a church in Idaho in March of 2023.
And you start to compare what you're building now as insignificant versus what you were building prior as incredible. And let me tell you, it's the complete opposite when you're fully invested. Because I tell you what, my life looked a lot different when I was building in New York City and I was building in LA. What I'm building with my daughter and my husband and my family is way more fruitful and rewarding than what I was building 5 years ago.
The boss babe clip was her mocking other people. This one is not mockery, it is her own testimony. She told a room of women that what she built in New York and LA lost on the merits to what she was building with her daughter and her husband. She had run the experiment on herself and family won.
There's a difference between following your dreams and paying attention to your obligations, and I think the culture today is so hyper-fixated on follow your dream. Where do you want to go? What do you want to do?
In the same talk, she gave the young woman her definition of the obligation.
I want to encourage you to focus more on your obligation as a woman of Christ, as a daughter of the Almighty King. I want you to focus on what that actually means, what the obligation is, and it's to honor your father and mother. It's to, God willing, become a mother. God willing, become a wife. God willing, become a grandmother.
Dreams are what the culture sells. Obligations are what a daughter of God attends to. Honor in that talk meant the family roles. 2.5 years later, the building moved back to the organization chart, and the obligation got renamed to a Charlie schedule. The last one from the teaching record is at the Bloom Q&A.
Just understanding what your role is as a woman, Proverbs 31, obviously, but knowing that it's a beautiful thing as a wife to be able to encourage your husband, be that biblical wife that you're supposed to be for him, and honor the order that God had created marriage to be in.
Honor the order that God had created marriage to be in. Her words. That order she taught over and over across her shows and keynotes was wife as the helpmate, husband as the head of the household, and family as the priority for both. The seat she now sits in is the husband's. CEO, chair, tour speaker, public face, she sits where Charlie sat and she does what Charlie did. By her own definition of what the order is, she isn't honoring it, she's reversing it. That is the whole record she built before September 10th. The helpmate, the guardian, the order, the sequence, the testimony. Now here is what happened to that record, starting 6 days after his death.
And we're going to make sure that we honor my husband so well that this whole world knows what his vision was and will be. And it's just, I feel so blessed and honored.
6 days after his death, on a private staff call, that is now how she defined honoring him. Make the world know his vision. The vision is TPUSA, and TPUSA is the work. Listen for what she didn't say in the same sentence. She did not say, I'm going to honor him by being the kind of mother to our kids that he wanted me to be. And she did not say, I'm going to honor him by being home. She said, the world knows, and the vision continues. This is one of the earliest pieces of Erika audio after September 10th, and the answer never moved after this. The flip was immediate, and it was final.
Turning Point USA will continue, like my husband always wanted, and it'll be bigger than ever. And we're going to honor him by doing that. We're going to stay humble.
It's the same answer, bigger than ever, and we honor him by doing that. Charlie's own definition of honor pointed the other way.
Being a father and being present, saying no to a lot more stuff, shamelessly, by the way.
He pointed it smaller, not bigger, and at home, not the road. So who got to redefine honoring Charlie? Charlie said one thing. Vance, when asked, said the same thing Charlie said. Erika herself, before any of this happened, said the same thing Charlie said. That is, 3 voices in agreement. Then September 10th happened, and the answer flipped within days to the opposite. That is the part that matters. It isn't the grief, and it isn't the difficulty of the moment. It is the redefinition done quietly in the direction that put one person in charge. Then, in her interviews that fall, a second answer started showing up. Here she is with Megyn Kelly in November.
I am so grateful that my husband, he's hand-selected the village that surrounds me now. You know, he built Turning Point USA, yes, and it's a machine, yes, but he handpicked all of the people that not only run the organization, but that were within our orbit, our closest orbit, the people that he loved and he trusted so much, and that he knew without a shadow of a doubt if something happened to him, that they would step up and they would be filled with the Holy Spirit and they would do what he knew they were born to do. And they wouldn't be afraid, they wouldn't cower, they would take on the mission that he had instilled in them.
Here's the February version on Fox Nation.
He built a machine. The team that he has built and assembled, that he handpicked, he was so good at picking talent. It wasn't the people who graduated at the top of their class. He loved when people had a work ethic that focused on being able to earn the position they're in.
A new answer starts showing up here next to the schedule answer. Honoring Charlie also means trusting the team he handpicked. He hand-selected the village. He built the machine. It's a clever line because it earns its keep twice. Whatever the organization does next, Charlie picked the people doing it, so it carries his blessing. An organization chart pre-approved by a man who is no longer available for comment. Anyone who questions the succession is no longer questioning her, they're questioning Charlie's judgment. The interview version and the broadcast version are the same framing. In this definition, the organization chart itself is a tribute. On the tour, the succession framing reached its final form.
He does assign things to you. And I have an assignment. You all have an assignment. And Charlie would always tell me, if anything ever happened to him, to make sure that I would step in and run Turning Point. And I took that very seriously. I didn't. It's not a burden. This is not a 9-to-5 for me. This is something that we always talked about. We were not blind to threats. But for me, it's always raise the babies, run Turning Point. And some people have said, well, you should have put an interim in there. Really? My husband, during our whole marriage, asked me to do this, his wish. And I'm gonna put an interim in there that could possibly burn the whole thing down. And then I have to come in later when I'm ready, which no one's ever ready for anything in life, and resurrect the ashes. Absolutely not. I would not be able to live with myself. I would not be able to live with myself knowing that I didn't honor that for Charlie.
For the record, I have a whole series on where the succession claim comes from, the appointment problem and its follow-ups, and I'm not reopening any of that here. For this video, take the claim at face value. Because even at face value, this is the honoring thesis in its final form. Running Turning Point is an assignment from God, a marriage-long wish from Charlie, the thing she could not live with herself for declining. The succession is not framed as a decision she made. It's framed as an honor she owed, and by her telling, even putting in an interim would have been a failure to honor him. There is a phrase in the middle of that clip that deserves its own moment.
But for me, it's always raise the babies, run Turning Point.
She has fused the two jobs into a single assignment. Back on the joint Q&A, she had a rule about exactly that.
If you try to have a career while you have your kids, there is no such thing as balance.
The woman who taught that now describes the balance as the assignment itself. Her old teaching never got a correction. It got a wish attached to it, and the wish outranks the teaching. Everything so far in this video has been words. Hers, Charlie's, Vance's, and words have to be weighed. This part isn't words, it's a government filing. On October 4th, 2025, 24 days after Charlie's death, Erika Kirk filed to trademark the name Charlie Kirk. The applicant isn't Turning Point, and it isn't the nonprofit. It's Erika Kirk, personally. There are 3 filings, his name in plain type and his handwritten signature, twice. The filings cover the podcast and the show, and then they keep going. T-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, stickers, tote bags, and one line straight off the form, charitable fundraising services. Whatever honoring Charlie turns out to mean, it comes in 8 trademark classes. So when the ask becomes honor Charlie, buy the shirt. Give to the cause. Keep the movement going. The name on all of it is hers now. She filed for it 24 days after he died. Now, applications aren't registrations. These are still moving through the trademark office, and locking down a dead man's name before strangers cash in is a normal thing for an estate to do. I will leave the why to you, but it sits next to everything else here. The schedule became the tribute, the work became the honor, and the name became an asset. Hers, 24 days in. That isn't interpretation, that's a filing date. By February, the answer had its broadcast version.
And so all I want is to be able to make sure we honor Charlie, we keep fighting the good fight, and we do it in such a bold and powerful way.
That isn't a leaked Zoom call anymore. It's a Fox Nation production with Jesse Waters, hair, makeup, and a camera crew, with the host who took over Tucker's slot. By February 2026, the staff call answer has become the public answer. Honor Charlie equals keep fighting. The good fight is the work. The work is the tour. The work is TPUSA. The work is everything except the place Charlie said the work was supposed to step aside for, which was home. Then comes the closing pivot.
My focus is so heavenward.
Whenever the answer doesn't survive a hard look, the next sentence goes to heaven. You can't fact check heavenward, and you can't hold it up next to what Charlie said to check whether it matches. 5 months after his death, this is the locked-in answer. Waters didn't push back. The cut made it to broadcast. The same documentary kept filming between stops.
Such a strong chapter. That's one of our, I think that might be our strongest chapter. One of our strongest.
No, it was
like 1,500 students.
It's one of those things where when you walk on stage, you feel like this energy and presence in the crowd.
Did they stay standing for you?
They stood.
I was about to say, I heard that. I was looking, I was watching the stream, I was like, are they still standing?
No,
I was back there, I was like, are they standing? I couldn't see.
No, they were all standing. I felt Charlie so much last night.
This is the part of the documentary that stays with me. It's the day after the Ole Miss event in the car, with a full night between her and that stage. The thing on her mind is the ovation. She brings it up and then she returns to it 3 times in 30 seconds.
Did they stay standing for you?
They stood.
I was about to say, I heard that. I was looking, I was watching the stream, I was like, are they still standing?
No,
I was back there, I was like, are they standing? I couldn't see.
No, they were all standing.
The people around her are asking the same question. Do they stay standing for you? And she has the count ready. The Charlie line arrives only after the ovation has been confirmed 3 times. Heavenward is the 3rd move, not the 1st. Again, I'm not telling you what that means. I'm telling you what order it happened in. That was a tour stop where the crowd showed up. 6 months later, with the same vice president on the bill, there's a stop where the crowd was the story, and she wasn't there for it. Here's what is documented, and here's what is claimed, and I want to keep those separate. What is documented is this. She was billed to host the Athens stop with the vice president. She did not appear. Colvette broke the news from the stage, and the organization's reason was security threats. Also documented from Colvette's own mouth the next morning.
I'm very glad to be back in Phoenix after our event yesterday at the University of Georgia in Athens, Georgia. Obviously, the big part of the news was that Erika she canceled her appearance at that because of security threats that were made against her. When we were determining Erika's participation in the event, is that there was just so much counter-protest energy. That was apparently all the talk of the school, and you combine that with the death threats and the doxing of the travel and the itineraries, all of these things.
10,000 tickets reserved, a venue that held about 4,000 with the stage in, and over 2,000 people in it. a gap he blamed on the left-wing groups swarming the ticketing and then not showing.
And then there were a bunch of left-wing groups that tried in this event, in which case we had about 10,000 tickets reserved for the event. And the venue holds about 4,000 when you consider the stage. So we had over 2,000 people there, massive energy, great enthusiasm from the attendees.
Those are the organization's own numbers, offered with the organization's own explanation. What is claimed by Candace Owens is this: 43,000 students on that campus. Ticket numbers she calls abysmal, and an Erika who knew she wasn't coming well before the crowd did.
Reality? Nobody wanted to attend. The ticket numbers were abysmal. That is what happens, and I want you to know that that is what has been happening.
I can't verify her sourcing, and I'm not going to pretend that I can.
So in the umpteenth hour, they decided to cancel her appearance. Accompanying video of the auditorium, he wrote, "Turning Point USA seems to have misestimated crowd size for Vance. The Aikens Ford Arena less than 25% filled."
A week later, a high school event in Phoenix was canceled too, and the stated reason was again death threats. So, weigh the two stories however you want. But here's what I can put side by side without any sourcing dispute at all. At the campus event where 1,500 students stood the whole time, a TPUSA stop with the vice president on the bill, she was there, and the ovation count was still on her mind the next day in the car. At the campus event where the ticket numbers became the story, also with the vice president on the bill, she was the one who didn't come. For the other half of the picture, here's Charlie on the subject of small crowds.
And I do want to just add, like when we started, it was not like this. It would be maybe 2 or 3 kids showing up to our events, right? And that would be a success. And it's easy to kind of like make fun of it and mock it, but that was really gritty and really grassrootsy. When I started, it seemed like a daunting generational project. And I just give all glory to God, and I'm just so humbled that I get to live to see the fruit of the last 13 years of my relentless traveling around the country and speaking to very small crowds. For 10 years straight, I traveled 300 days a year. That's 3,000 days on the road.
His words, his brag, on a campus 6 weeks before the end. The small crowd was the whole origin story of Turning Point USA. 2 or 3 kids at an event counted as a success in his own telling, and he kept showing up for a decade before the arenas filled in. Whatever the real reason Athens didn't happen, nobody has ever had to explain a small room to Charlie Kirk. One more date before we move on. Athens, the same event that was too dangerous to attend with the vice president and his entire Secret Service detail, was April 14th. The Trump rally coming up in a minute was April 17th, 3 days later. So, whatever was hunting her in Georgia on a Monday apparently respected state lines, because by Thursday in Phoenix, she was just fine. The stage was bigger and the crowd was bigger, and there she is. I'm sure the crowd part is a coincidence. But before the rally, here's how our local news broadcast introduced her in March.
The room erupting into applause as Erika Kirk takes the stage, now leading Turning Point USA, following the death of her husband, Charlie Kirk.
Now leading Turning Point USA. By March, that is the plain news description of what she is. When she does speak in that news piece, she speaks as Charlie's voice, telling the room what Charlie wanted for Nevada.
I remember Charlie saying a little bit ago, he's like, gosh, we need to increase the conservative footprint in Nevada. I'm so grateful to have a headquarters here.
In April, she's in Phoenix at a Turning Point Action rally, doing the warm-up.
And my husband, Charlie, gave his life for that work. And what gets built lasts for generations long after the noise has run out of one-liners. There's no one else I'd rather have on our side than President Donald J. Trump.
She isn't there as a grieving spouse, and she isn't there as a policy person. She's there doing the front man's job. Tell the crowd what the fight cost, fire them up, and point them at Trump. Here's one more clip from July of 2024.
I think also you're here to hear from, hopefully, the next president of the United States, Donald J. Trump.
That last clip is who used to hold that spot. That is Charlie in July of 2024, opening Turning Point's Believer Summit by pointing the room toward Trump's arrival. A few weeks before that, he spent a day broadcasting from Turning Point Action's Chase the Vote town hall, telling the audience,
President Trump will be here very, very soon for his first address post-conviction.
It is the same picture every time. A Turning Point event, Trump headlining, and A. Kirk on the stage before him, aiming the crowd at the main act. The person in that spot used to be the founder, Now it's his widow. The woman doing all of that is the same woman who said the battleground is your home.
Battleground is for your heart. It's for your home.
And she said it less than a year before this. There's one more inheritance to track. The introduction you heard in the very first clip.
The great Erika Kirk. Again, the book is...
The great Erika Kirk from the first clip was not a one-time flourish. While Charlie was alive, I can find exactly one instance of anyone calling her that on the record. Charlie himself in a breezy promo for her podcast episode back in 2022.
Hey everybody, today on the Charlie Kirk Show, a special episode of my wife talking about her pregnancy. I think you'll really enjoy it. The great Erika Kirk. I think you'll love it.
It reads like a husband hyping up his wife's show because, well, that's what it was. After September 10th, it becomes a recurring introduction from inside the organization. Colvette reaches for it 16 days after Charlie's death.
We're, of course, going to have the great, and she does deserve that title, the great Erika Kirk is going to join us.
And then twice more at the book launch.
We have the great Erika Kirk. Continue on with the great Erika Kirk.
Andy Biggs borrows it from the AmericaFest stage in December.
Want to reiterate what the great Erika Kirk said the other day?
Then there's the line that gives the whole game away. And it belongs to Jesse Waters, the same Waters from the Fox Nation documentary. Colvette queued it up approvingly on Charlie's own show.
Basically, Jesse Waters, who got the first exclusive interview with her, saying the same thing. 409.
Famous quote behind every great man is a great woman. We're now realizing how great Charlie was by seeing how great Erika is. Erika has been able to take hope from grief. She didn't ask for this mission. She accepted this mission. This was not something she wanted, but this is something she's now duty-bound to do. Charlie's mission was to save Western civilization, and that is now her mission.
The tell that it has become a title rather than a compliment is that Colvette stops mid-sentence to defend it.
Great. And she does deserve that title, the great Erika Kirk.
Nobody defends a throwaway compliment. You defend a coronation. Charlie's greatness has become the evidence for hers. That is the transfer itself, replayed with a nod from his own studio. Waters closes that same clip by handing her the mission itself. Charlie's mission was to save Western civilization, and that is now her mission. The construction she used at the memorial, his mission is my mission,
Now his mission is my mission,
comes back out of a Fox host's mouth 7 weeks later as settled fact. The title the movement used for the man, the great Charlie Kirk, moved to her within weeks of his death from the same microphones. I'm not going to tell you that was coordinated because I can't prove it and I won't pretend that I can. I'm telling you it happened and you heard it happen across 5 clips. The latest answer I have on record is from June 12th, 2026, and it is the tidiest one because in this version, the math finally works out.
When it comes to all of this, like being a part of Turning Point is an extension of my husband. Like that's a piece of him that's still here. That's how my babies will know their father.
Running the organization and raising his children stop being competing duties because the organization is a piece of him, and running it is how the kids will know their dad. The company was already the tribute, the mission, and the honor. Now it's also the parenting. I understand why that lands in the room, but her own teaching from earlier in this video does not allow it. The woman who said children are not an inconvenience to your dreams is now describing a version of motherhood where the CEO chair is itself the parenting. Her babies will know their father through Turning Point USA. The teaching used to say the place they would learn all of that was the home. One small footnote for people keeping track, the pastor hosting that Q&A is James Caddis, the same channel that carries her 2021 Flourishing in the Counterculture talk from earlier in this video. The same pastor's channel is carrying both versions, 5 years apart. By June 2026, the argument comes with the Bible verse.
1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 3. Honor widows. God has ordered his church to care for widows, that widows be included so they are not isolated, to protect widows, to care for widows, to not persecute a widow in the most ungodly of ways because you're jealous that you are not the one controlling an organization that widow's husband built.
Questioning who controls the organization is now persecuting
a widow.
It is the same job that Honor Charlie framing does. Both of them end at her, except this version arrives with a citation. Every road in this video, the schedule, the machine, the name, the title, the verse, leads back to one night in September. So let's finish where all of it was set, the memorial.
I was Charlie's confidant. I was his vault. His closest and most trusted advisor, his best friend. I poured into him and loved him so deeply, empowered him.
That is 11 days after his death, at his memorial, and both definitions of her role are sitting in the same speech. The first half is the pre-death Erika, and it is all in the past tense.
I was Charlie's confidant. I was his vault. But I made sure that when Charlie returned from work, it was his sacred landing place, away from the worries of the world.
The vault, the landing place, that is the helpmate framework from every clip in the middle of this video, being eulogized along with him. The second half is the post-death Erika.
And so I promise you today, every part of our work will become greater. I am tremendously honored to be the new CEO of Turning Point USA. Charlie and I were united in purpose. His passion was my passion, and now his mission is my mission. Everything that Turning Point USA built through Charlie's vision and hard work, we will make 10 times greater through the power of his memory.
The board had made the title official 3 days earlier. The memorial is where she announced it to the world. She retired the helpmate role and announced the succession inside the same speech. And as far as I can tell, nobody in that stadium heard a contradiction. There's one more passage from that night, the biggest one, and it has a history.
Here I am, Lord. Send me. After Charlie finished, I met him backstage, and I spoke to him, and I'll never forget this. I said, Charlie, baby, please talk to me next time before you say that statement. Because when you say something like that, there is so much power in that verse. When you say, here I am, Lord, use me, God will take you up on that. And he did with Charlie. "11 days ago, God accepted that total surrender from my husband.
The surrender line is the theological engine under everything else in this video. If God accepted Charlie's offer, then September 10th is not only a loss, it's a transaction that went through. And a transaction that went through leaves an estate to administer. Honor the mission, run the machine, finish the schedule, his mission is my mission. All of it stands on that one sentence. That sentence was not composed in the 11 days between the shooting and the stadium. In December 2024, with Charlie at AmericaFest, she was already telling the audience that the Here I Am speech he had given a year earlier was a live offer God had seen and acted on.
Can you believe how good she looks? She had a baby 6 months ago. Can you believe that? I mean, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And it's just, this year has been so trying and difficult in more ways than one. You guys might remember a year ago, I gave the whole speech of Here I Am, Lord Send Me. Does anyone remember that whole thing that we did? Yeah. And it was kind of this joke that we had. As soon as I gave that message, we got so sick. We didn't even have Christmas. Last Christmas, we had Domino's Pizza for Christmas.
Oh, yes, we did. I remember him getting off stage and I say, honey, do you realize what you just did? He's like, yeah, I just spoke. And I was like, no. You said, here I am. That is a very powerful statement. And God's like, I see you. And he just, I mean, it's been a wild year, but Charlie is so obedient. Charlie is so obedient to God, to the Word of God. And it's been so humbling to witness the way that God has used him this year because he made that declaration a year ago, saying, here I am, I'm ready. Wherever you need me to be, Lord, I'll be, and I'm your servant. And just put me out there in the thick of it, and you did it.
She closed the story by asking him to warn her the next time so that they would be prepared.
But again, now I say, if you're going to stand on stage and say, here I am, make sure you tell me beforehand so I know what we're going up against so that we're prepared.
Listen to the two answers inside that clip because they do not match. Charlie's own word for the whole bit, the message, the sickness, the ruined Christmas, is on camera in his own voice.
It was kind of this joke that we had.
To him, the whole thing was a joke. To her, it was a live offer to God, an offer God saw and acted on. She even wanted a warning before he made another one so they could be prepared.
Make sure you tell me beforehand so I know what we're going up against.
So when she stood at the memorial and said God accepted that total surrender, she was quoting her half of an old disagreement. The man who supposedly made that surrender is on camera calling it a joke that they had. The woman who took over is the one who always described it as an offer God takes you up on. I'm not saying she planned anything. I am saying the story that turns his death into God accepting his offer, the story everything since has been built on, had one author, and it wasn't Charlie. Erika was not the only one giving that answer at the memorial.
Let us honor Charlie in the best way possible, by continuing his work, by building on the foundation he laid.
That is the sitting White House Chief of Staff from the same stage on the same night. So the definition this whole video has been tracking was not improvised over the months that followed. Honor Charlie, defined as continue his work, was announced at the funeral by the most senior political operative in the country. Everything after that, the schedule, the tour, the machine, the filings, is execution. One more voice from that night.
And ladies and gentlemen, let's honor Jesus. Let's honor Charlie, let's honor Erika.
That is Frank Turek at the memorial. He runs Cross-Examine, the Christian Apologetics Ministry. He was with Charlie at UVU when Charlie was shot, and he rode in the SUV during the rush to the hospital. Both details come from his own account. He was as inside gets. On the night of the memorial, 11 days after Charlie's death, that is the line he gave the room. You could read that as standard grief language for a widow. And I want to acknowledge that reading exists. But standard grief language is, let's pray for Erika, or let's hold her family up in support. That is not what Turek said. He said, honor each one. The widow gets named in the same list as the savior of Christianity and the man being memorialized. Whatever you make of that, what it tells you about the inside of this network is everything. 11 days after Charlie's death, this is how a Christian apologist who had been with Charlie when he was shot was talking about Erika. Once a room of that size agrees to that framing, the rest follows. Of course she runs the tour, and of course honoring Charlie means honoring Erika. The room was not being asked to decide anything that night. The board had voted her in as CEO and chair 3 days before the memorial. The room was blessing a done deal. Here's the pattern. Before September 10th, Erika had a complete teaching on what a faithful wife and mother does. She taught helpmate, guardian of the home, manage the household, and raise your babies to love the Lord. The rest of it, she can say herself.
You are always to submit to your husband, and not in a way of slave versus master, but in a helpmate way.
That's some form of feminism, to be so caught up in, I have to have this career.
Really, most important relationship is the one with your husband and your children.
The battleground is for your heart, it's for your home, it's for your future.
What I'm building with my daughter and my husband and my family is way more fruitful and rewarding than what I was building 5 years ago.
After September 10th, Erika is the CEO and chair of a $250 million plus organization, the headliner of the Make Heaven Crowded Revival Tour, a Trump appointee, the opener at a Trump rally, and the personal applicant on 3 trademark filings for her husband's name. The schedule that used to be the obstacle in Charlie's framework is now, in her words, the honor. The balance she called the myth is now the assignment.
For me, it's always raise the babies, run Turning Point.
Even the introduction moved. The great, which was the movement's word for Charlie, is now the movement's word for her. Charlie said the highest honor was being a present spouse and parent. He said it in 2023, and he said it again in 2025. Vance said the same thing 5 days after Charlie's death. Erika herself said the same thing for years on the stages where she spoke. Then it got rewritten at the memorial, on the staff calls, at AmericaFest, on the tour, and in a government filing. One line at a time, the thing Charlie said to fight against became the way you honor him. Again, I'm not telling you what to do with that. I think you can hear the contradictions yourself. The question I keep coming back to is, Which version of Erika was telling the truth? Is it the one who spoke for years about home being the battleground, or the one who chose the platform over the home the moment the platform was available? At some point, the question stops being whether her grief is real. The question becomes which set of words she expects you to take seriously, because both sets can't be right at the same time. If somebody in your life keeps saying, honor Charlie, this is the video to send them. Share it with your friends if you want. The clips speak for themselves. Subscribe for the follow-ups because there's more of the story than one video can hold.
You can have questions, but
I'm gonna ask you
please
one.
honor my husband.
Stop. That's it. That's all I have to say. Stop.